Well, what have we got happening here? This right here, when Derek Rucker sat in front of this screen in this studio and landed his top 15, it was the most talked about content piece for the entire NBL season. Not only is he back, he's now doing a preseason top 15 to go with his postseason top 15 as well. Derek Rucker, welcome to you. You must have rocks in your head to want to do this twice.
I thought last season was really difficult, Jack, and you saw how I agonized over that list. I saw it counsel from so many different luminaries in the basketball world. But this is much more difficult because there's an element of projection. I've got to kind of figure out who's going to play well, who's going to fit into their new programs or slightly modified teams. So this has been really tough, but also something that I'm really proud of.
Now, okay, that's all great. I'm just looking around. I'm a little bit nervous. Where's Parker Jackson Cartwright? Because last time you did this list, he wanted to kill you. Now, I had you back last time. I'm not sure I'm backing you up a second time. Have you looked after him this year?
Somewhat, but I have a feeling that Parker's one of those guys who is never going to be happy with where he is unless he's number one. But we saw what it drove him to do in that qualifying final playoff game down in Sydney. Parker Jackson Cartwright is a tremendous basketball player. Again, I have him as an MVP candidate, and let's just see where he fits in that top 15.
He's not here. I just checked. He's definitely not here. Let's just talk a little bit about the process. This is obviously something that you've never done before, and we've never done before, is to do a preseason projection. I would imagine that it would have been very hard with the imports coming into the competition that we can jump online, we can look at all their stats and watch all of the clips, but it's hard to know how that translates to an NBL style.
And that is the hardest aspect of this. And look, I gave players, imports, that have previously participated in the NBL, they get a little bit more benefit, especially if they thrive. So someone like Cam Oliver or Jarrell Martin, those guys got a little bit of a bump up over some guys that haven't played here before, because I mention this all the time. The NBL is one of the most unique competitions in the world. It looks like you've seen it before if you're an American or if you're a foreigner. You recognize some of the names, but until you actually get here and feel the energy at an NBL game and the way we play this game, it's much different. So there's an adjustment period that all imports must go through. Those imports that can figure it out quickest, those are the ones that thrive.
And that might explain some of the big-name imports that we've got coming for NBL 25, why you may not see some of those in this particular list. That's not to say that postseason they won't be on that as well. That's up to them. Do you want to get any apologies out of the way now? Before we jump into the first player in the top 15, are there any apologies that you want to serve up ahead of time?
The second 15 list is streamed with guys who could actually make all NBL teams. That's how difficult it is to try and select the top 15. And it's a testament to the strength of this league. And a lot of people say when we talk about how great the league is that it's all bluff. There is no bluff. There are Olympians who are in that second 15 that couldn't crack into the top 15, most notably a Matthew Dellavedova, someone who really changed his career arc last season. We saw in the playoffs in that championship series, he was Melbourne United's arguably their best player. When they needed plays to be made, Matthew Dellavedova was the guy. It led him to be an Olympian another time. So, and then his teammate, Ian Clark, who is a guy who flirted with 50, 40, 90 all season.
Sixth man of the year.
Sixth man of the year. He doesn't slide in. Nathan Sobey, one who caused a lot of controversy. I took a lot of flack last season. I had him at number 16, but there were reasons why he was 16 and not in the top 15. But if you continue, Jolden Bolden, the new import, Kendrick Davis for Adelaide, he's someone who comes in with high credentials, but we'll have to wait and see how he performs. Tyler Harvey, James Bateman, Rob Edwards, Tyrell Harrison, one of the grand final heroes, one of the championship series heroes. Jordan Crawford doesn't make this 15. So that's the magnitude and the caliber of player we're looking at. I'm stressed out. Let's go.
Well, I can say, just as a little caveat, that as I said, this is the first time we've ever done a preseason top 15. I know how hard you've worked on this, and I know that you've sought counsel from a lot of the experts. So good luck. As I always say when we do this top 15, please send all of your correspondence to Derek Rucker on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and any other social medium.
Thank you.
I want no part in what comes next. Let's start with number 15 in Derek Rucker's top 15.
Number 15 is the Adelaide 36ers' outstanding big man, Isaac Humphries. He is one of the best players in the league. Make no mistake, he can take over a game. He is an all-NBL type performer, high field goal percentage guy. Probably didn't get enough usage in the early half of last season, but once the coaching change was made, we really saw the best of Isaac Humphries. And when DJ Vasiljevic came into the lineup, you could see how strong and how much more improved they were. He's also a deceptively good rim protector. And I'm going to go on the limb here. I think he is the Sixers' most important player. He may not be their best player, but for them to have success, for them to crack the top 6, Isaac Humphries must be the man.
The most common thing that we spoke about in commentary with Adelaide games was his usage and not getting the ball, particularly early in games. I know it used to drive Leonard Copeland crazy when he was doing Adelaide games. Surely that's got to be an emphasis under new coach Mike Wells, is to get the ball down in the low block.
We discussed the change with Scotty Ninnis being shown the door. But one thing Ninnis did do well was unlock Humphries. So Mike Wells, that's going to be the challenge in his new system, is to ensure that Isaac is a focal point offensively. Now, they have some talent down there. They have the point guard that I just mentioned, Kendrick Davis, comes in with a nice reputation. They have DJ. So it is going to be a tricky mix in trying to determine how that usage is allocated amongst his top players. And, of course, they've got the big man, Jarrell Martin.
Well, this is interesting all of a sudden, because if we go to number 14 on Derek Rucker's top 15, you've got one of his teammates alongside him.
And DJ Vasiljevic has dropped down a little bit, but both of these guys have been somewhat penalized by the fact that they haven't played in the playoffs last year. So there are other players who are higher up on the list who participated in postseason play, but that's not to say that DJ Vasiljevic can not lead this team. He is a hell of a shooter. He is a great offensive player. One of the guys who's really volatile on the offensive end. He's a marksman from the three-point line. But the thing I really like about DJ is that he takes pleasure in seeing his teammates excel. I believe he is an underrated playmaker. He's a guy who should be able to average, with the pieces around him, he should be able to average 5 assists a game, and I would not be surprised, again, if he's a top 10 player at the end of the season.
Top 5 in the competition last season for points per game and 3 points made. Is the evolution, though, in DJ's game that ability to put the ball on the floor, that he's more than just a spot-up shooter?
He is, and I think, when you look at his skill set, he has all of those capabilities. He can make any shot out on the floor. He's won a championship already, so he's got that championship pressure put away. He's got a title. No one can ever take that away from him. But now the challenge is to show his personal development as a player, that he can make his teammates better. And I think that's well within his scope as a player. And if he's able to do that, the Sixers are going to be dangerous. 236ers
to start off the top 15. There you go. There's some interesting things coming in this list. At number 13.
At number 13, here's a man who actually addressed me in person last year during the playoffs. And I get it. Hey, I love when the players come and talk to me about their ranking, because it means that not only are they paying attention, but they're passionate about what people think about them and what people think about their performances. Milton Doyle, the championship-winning two-guard for the Tasmania Jack Jumpers. Here's a guy who's sleeky smooth with it. He's very good on the offensive end, underrated defensive player. But what I like, and I thought that we saw in the championship series, was a level of resilience and mental toughness. He didn't have things all his way in that championship series, and it's tough to thrive in those circumstances, especially against a really tough defensive team like Melbourne United. But he stuck with it. He hit enough big shots throughout the championship series. We know that he loves the big occasion, and Milton Doyle, with the absence now of Jack McVay, who's gone on to sign that two-way deal for the Houston Rockets, we should see Doyle's usage rate go up, and now his chance to really show what he can do as a top-notch player.
So you think now, if it wasn't already, is it now very much Milton Doyle's team?
Well, I think his role in that team, he's certainly gone from like a number 2 up to a 1B or a 1A, and I think that's well within his talent scope. I think Milton Doyle could have a big-time season. And remember, early in the season last year, there was a lot of discussion about Milton being an MVP candidate. He had some personal tragedy in his family that took him away and was disruptive to his season. But make no mistake, that guy's talent is MVP level, and I wouldn't be surprised if he features in the end-of-season, postseason awards.
Speaking of correspondence, I know Milton challenged you personally. I'm a bit worried for you because when Milton Doyle's mum gets on Twitter and sees that he's 13, look out, you got some stuff coming your way. To number 12, a returning face to the NBL.
Number 12 is Jack White, and Jack White is an outstanding basketball player, someone who's had a very good career, and he's still a very young man. He hasn't hit the prime of his career. He's had a couple of years over in the NBA and the G League doing his thing there, has been outstanding in that environment. Unfortunately for Jack, he just seems to encounter some type of physical problem right when he's starting to hit his stride and have an impact. So, unfortunately, but to our betterment, he is now back in the NBL playing for Melbourne United. Here's a guy that can stretch the floor from the three-point line. He's athletic, he's energetic, and undersized bigs, which is what he is in our league, they do very well. And I think Jack White is going to fill a nice void left by Luke Travers. And Melbourne United will not skip a beat by being able to get his signing.
Do you think that Dean Vickerman seems to be able to unlock the best of Jack White?
There's no doubt, but I mean, to say Dean Vickerman only has unlocked Jack White is like underselling Dean. He does a fantastic job with his talent. He gets him to play within the system. And we got to keep in mind, Melbourne United have lost Luke Travers, Ariel Porty, and Joe Awalachua Jr. So they have lost a lot of talent, but the acquisition of Jack White, the re-signing of Ian Clark starts to help with those absences.
They look strong. Melbourne, once again, I think they're going to be very, very good. Next on the list is another returning face. We haven't seen this guy for a few seasons.
Cam Oliver, one of the most exciting players in NBL history, one of the greatest dunks in NBL history. And I was actually surprised, Jack, to see him come back to the competition.
What surprised you about that?
Well, when you look at a guy of his talent and his athleticism and his physical stature, usually those guys in recent history do not return because they go on to earn big-time money elsewhere. We saw it happen with some of the New Zealand players. We've seen it happen right across the board now. But for Cam Oliver to come back to Sydney is a great signing for the league and someone who's going to provide not only a basketball talent, but high entertainment value in a city on a team that seeks that. It's important that they have high entertainment value in Sydney. And also, he gets to play for Brian Goorjian. And I think this is the type of player that really thrives under Brian. I think it's the type of player that Brian loves to coach. Someone that you don't have to wind up and motivate every day. You just put him out on the court, and Cam Oliver is going to come out and bring you effort.
And then how important, we'll get to some of his other teammates later in the list. Little spoiler, there's more Sydney players on this list. But how important is for Cam to have a really, really good point guard alongside him? Because when he was at Cairns, Scott Machado helped get the best out of Cam Oliver.
Well, we know that Cam Oliver plays the 4 and the 5, and historically in the NBL, teams thrive when they have a good point guard and they have a good 4-man. So I think Cam Oliver is going to really excel. And the other thing is, on that talent-laden Sydney team, he is going to attract a lot of the lesser defenders in the league because I would imagine most coaches are going to scout to stop Xavier Cooks. Okay, so that means, now look, there are no slouches in the NBL. No one out there is a sucker or a mannequin. But we're looking for the slightest margins. And right now, that's where Sydney is going to have an advantage because that second guy, if he has to guard Cam Oliver, I give that advantage to the Sydney Kings.
To number 10 in Derek Rucker's top 15, and I would suggest that this one might get a few people talking.
Yes, Samson Froling, the long-haired lefty from Illawarra. Very proud of Sam to have made his move up. And you know what, Jack? It's based on one series, in my opinion. Last year, I think he was around 12, 13 in the top 15. But he did something that you rarely see. He outplayed by himself JLA Jr. and Ariel Porty in that semifinal series. I thought United had a severe advantage with that two-headed tandem going against Sam Froling. Sam outplayed both of them. And during that series, Sam address me again. He was another player that came to me and asked, how could I be here on your list and this player is above me on the list? And I went back. When players come to me and express their perspectives, I go back and I evaluate and see if that person had any merit in their discussion. Well, I didn't need to with Sam. I was there calling those games, and I saw him outplay those guys, and then I realized, this guy's probably a top 10 player now. And then he's gone on. He had a really good year, a really good offseason in New Zealand. And like Isaac Humphries, there's other talent on the Adelaide roster. Same with Illawarra. There's other talent in that roster. But Sam Froling is the most important guy. They cannot go well this season if he is subpar. He must play at that level that he showed us in the semifinal series. And if he does that, Illawarra has a really good chance of being in the top 4 again.
So he won last season's Next Generation Award as the best young player in the competition. Do you think, on everything you've just said, is Sam Froling ready to be an all-NBL first-team guy now? Is he ready to be the best big man in the competition?
Well, he can be right up there. And on any given night, he can outplay his opponent. And I don't care who that opponent is. And we have some really good bigs in the competition. But as I said, Sam needs to play at a level consistently. And one of the advantages he's shown throughout his career is durability. He's very durable. So if he can be at 8.2 out of 10 night after night, he's going to figure in one of the two in all NBL teams at the end of the season.
I agree with everything you said about that semi-final series against Melbourne. He was absolutely exceptional. Number 9, where are we going?
Number 9, another outstanding big man, but a different type, Keano Pender. He's a unique big man in our league. He's undersized, he's extremely athletic, high motor. And Jack, when you look back 3 or 4 years ago, it is amazing where this guy has put himself. There were people saying that he wasn't even an NBL 1 player, let alone a starter in the NBL. We know the backstory. He went up to Cairns. Adam Ford filled him with confidence. He thrived up there. Got a great contract with the Perth Wildcats. Now he is one of the blue chip big men in the competition. And, again, I'm going to say it. He's the most important piece for the Perth Wildcats. When he goes down, as we saw him do so in the series against Tasmania, the moment Keano Pender got hurt and wasn't able to function, the Perth Wildcats fell apart. I think I've quoted this before. Without Pender on the floor, the Wildcats were a minus 31 in the balance of that series once he sustained that injury down in Tasmania. He must go for the Wildcats to go. Also, I'm not sure about their depth in those big man positions. I think that is a bit of a kryptonite space for them. Keano must stay healthy, and if he can, he provides just an energy. He and Xavier Cooks are the big motors in our competition. Those two guys drive their teams. They're athletic and the type of guys that every coach would love to have. I look for a big series. Again, even at number 9, I think the media vastly underrates Keano Pender.
How much better do you think that Keano will be now having had a season under John Rillie, but probably more importantly, a season playing next to Bryce Cotton?
Well, that was the other big thing, Jack. I loved how he fit in with a superstar. Not all players can accept that role readily and without envy and with all the other emotions that come with playing alongside a megastar with Bryce Cotton. And Keano Pender is one of those outstanding complementary stars who knows how to thrive. He's low maintenance in terms of needing the basketball. He goes and creates his own opportunities. He's a very good rebounder, good rim protector. And I think, if he plays at a high level, the Wildcats, although I don't have them as a top 4 team just yet, I still need to see how Dylan Windler, the latest signing, I need to see how he fits into the equation. But I've got them probably around that 5, 6, dare I say 7.
Play-in type area?
You can say 7 because we got to go out to Perth. I want to be chill out there for Hoops Fest. I don't want people coming up to me all up in my face. So for the record, Jack Heverin may not think that the Perth Wildcats are in the top 6. Fair?
Yeah, I've had a week of feedback on this, so thank you for bringing it up again. Yeah,
No
as if the Red Army aren't angry enough. Thanks so much. We are getting to the pointy end. I'm going to move on and get myself out of trouble here. We're getting to the pointy end now of Derek Rucker's top 15 to number 8.
This is tough. Love this guy as a player, but I've had to peg him down a bit. Jaylen Adams. Put him down to number 8.
Okay.
I thought last season he let external factors perhaps the coaching situation affect his on-court performance. Now, he was not terrible by any stretch, but he wasn't at the MVP level that he should be every year in this competition. I don't think he led by example, and now the challenge is out there for him. Yeah. And with a new coach, a coach who is extremely, extremely demanding of stars, there will be no slippage permissible in Jaylen Adams' performance under Brian Goorjian. I can guarantee you that. So, having said that, I expect him to respond to this challenge. And I think with the talent around him, there will be less expectations on him. There will be less focus on him from a scout perspective, because there's so many pieces you have to focus on with that Sydney Kings team. I think he'll excel, and by the end of the season, I wouldn't be surprised if he's a top 3 player.
So that's my other question, I guess, then about Jaylen, is that this Sydney team looks a lot different to the one they had last year, in that there are so many offensive pieces, both in the starting 5 and coming off the bench. So how does he go about it? Because the Jaylen Adams that we've always seen in the NBL, he's been the number 1 guy with the ball in his hand a lot. So does his role change at all?
Well, that's a tough adjustment for anyone that's used to high usage and making plays whenever you want. He is going to have to learn to play in a bit more structure. On the defensive end, there are going to be expectations on him to supply more ball pressure up the court, to try and set tempo on the defensive end. He's just not going to be a one-way player in this system. And again, I think physically he's capable, talent-wise he's capable. It's just, how does he personally navigate that mix of doing his thing, but also making sure that Brian Goorjian's system is run appropriately and that he finds his teammates and helps them thrive as well. So there's a lot of variables for him to get through, but I think it's well within his range as a player.
That one will get some people talking for sure. Number 7 is one of the other big men in the competition who's taken some big steps forward in the last 24 months.
Will Magnay is number 7, an elite shot blocker and rim protector, and I think we saw how much that was valued by his selection for the Paris Boomers team. And I thought, he performed admirably during his time with the Boomers. And in that championship series last year against Melbourne United, I thought he was outstanding. I thought he was probably one of the 5 best players in that series. His ability just to change games as soon as he entered the games. I think he has a little bit more to provide on the offensive end, and another player who may thrive with Jack McVay no longer being a part of that Tasmania Jack Jumpers outfit. He went over in the offseason, did some NBA workouts. I thought that the feedback from the NBA teams was really high, which in turn led to an increased confidence. I think you're going to see a more dynamic offensive Will Magnay, and someone that has a bit more confidence because of what he saw and experienced in the offseason.
And that's an interesting one with him too. So we're recording this about 4 weeks out from the start of the season. Do you think there's a point coming where maybe the NBL loses Will Magnay to an NBA opportunity at some point this season?
I thought it would have already happened by now, but the NBA teams have to go through their processes, and perhaps we see what happens as they enter and get out of NBA vet camps in October. So there's a possibility that, the NBA could be in Will's future. Hopefully not during our season, but hopefully on the back end of the NBL season. And the other thing about Will Magnay is that he has a resilience and a mental toughness that I probably was not aware of until that Game 5. This guy tore his hamstring in Game 5 early and still found a way to make a contribution. And we remember the iconic dunk he had late in that game against Melbourne United when he roared after he dunked over the Melbourne big men. So I think that's something that you have to appreciate, and it matters. And when you're starting to rank guys, what do they do when the proverbial hits the fan? Do they show up or do they cower under the circumstances? Will Magnay proved he's the type of guy that raises up.
Little birdie tells me that someone's been working on his free throw shooting as well, and it looks a little bit better than what it looked last season.
Let's hope so.
Last one, number 6. After that, we're going to pause and we'll come back next time with our top 5. Who's at number 6? Who's just on the edge?
Number 6, I'm going with the Sydney Kings championship winner from NBL 23, Derek Walton Jr. of the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. I've got him above Jaylen Adams.
This guy's fascinating.
Wow, this was really difficult because I put those two guys head to head and trying to figure out where they fit on the list. Derek Walton Jr., a different type of dynamic player than Jaylen Adams. More composed, a bit more of he lets the game come to him and feel it out. But a very valuable signing for Southeast Melbourne. Outstanding leadership qualities. Someone, again, who has a great sense of the moment, doesn't get nervous, can score, can lead, and I think the league is so much better off. Now we've got Adams and Walton Jr. and Bryce Cotton in the league at the same time. This is a fascinating time for small guards in the league, and I just think he's going to have a real impact. And I think we forget how good he was that year with the Sydney Kings.
Interesting, too, when we had the NBL preseason predictions from a lot of the commentary team, a lot of love for Derek Walton Jr., including Pete Hooley, who had him as the MVP.
Wow.
Do you see him as being an MVP candidate?
I don't, but I think he is going to be a high-level performer and someone whose value to the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix won't probably resonate with the media when it comes to MVP. So the things that he's going to be able to do, let me give you an example. They have a high-usage, high-volume shooter coming in with Nathan Sobey. I believe Derek Walton Jr. is going to make Nathan Sobey a much better player because they'll stay in offenses. Where Nathan likes sometimes to go a little bit rogue offensively, Derek Walton Jr. is going to ensure that Nathan gets shots to satisfy his need for the ball. And I think it's going to make Nathan a more efficient scorer. I think players like Angus Glover, who's had experience with Derek Walton Jr., he's a player who's going to thrive. Geordie Hunter has played.
Imagine Derek Walton Jr. finding Geordie Hunter as the roller. Yeah.
These guys are not unfamiliar to one another. So Southeast Melbourne have a bit of an inherent advantage. And although it's a new team, these guys have experience together.
So that right there is 15 through 6. Next time we come back and we crown Derek Rucker's top 5 preseason predictions for the NBL 25 season. Don't forget, of course, to hit us up on all of our social media channels, on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, and Derek's own personal Instagram and social media as well with your thoughts on what you've seen so far. This is going to get a lot of people talking. We'll catch you next time on Derek Rucker's Top 15.